checked the system twice before I looked up at the man sitting in front of me, because according to the hospital database, he wasn't there. It was 2:17 a.m. The ER always felt thinner at that hour, fluorescent lights humming, TV flickering on mute, the waiting room half empty, the air heavy with disinfectant and stale coffee. "Name?" I asked. He gave it calmly, spelled it without prompting. "Date of birth?" Answered immediately. I typed everything carefully, hit search. No patient found. I tried again, slower, verified the spelling out loud. Still nothing. That wasn't normal. Even uninsured walk-ins generate an arrival timestamp the moment they cross the ER threshold. The door sensors log it. The cameras tag it. The system never misses an entry. "You came through the main entrance?" I asked. "Yes," he said, "like usual." That made me pause. I didn't recognize him. I checked the arrival board. Last entry, 1:41 a.m. No one since. The man sat perfectly still, hands folded on the counter. No phone, no restless shifting, just watching me with a polite, patient expression. "Reason for visit?" "Stomach pain," he said. "It's not getting better." Vitals looked fine when triage stepped out to check him. Blood pressure steady, pulse normal, skin warm. I printed a wristband anyway. The machine chirped and sealed it around his wrist like it always did. Behind me, the treatment doors opened. "Room 9, a nurse called. I gestured for him to go ahead. He stood and walked toward the double doors. On instinct, I glanced up at the security monitor that shows the hallway feed in real time. The corridor was empty. No one walking through. No doors swinging. Nothing. My stomach tightened. When I looked back at my screen, the intake fields I had just completed were blank. The cursor blinked in an empty chart. No timestamp. No patient. No record. Like I'd never entered him at all. And according to the system, he had never been there. I told myself it was a glitch. Systems freeze, cameras drop frames. Night shift magnifies small errors until they feel personal. But 2 nights later, at 2:14 a.m., it happened again. A woman this time, mid-30s, dark coat, no purse, no phone in her hands. She approached the desk without looking around the waiting room, as if she already knew no one would be sitting near her. "Name?" I asked. She gave it calmly. I entered the information. No patient found. I didn't react this time. I kept my expression neutral and checked the arrival board. Last entry, 1:52 a.m. She had not triggered the door sensor. "You walk in through the main ER?" I asked. "Yes," she said. No hesitation. I glanced at the security monitor mounted above the desk, live feed from the waiting room. The camera angle showed the chairs behind her. In the screen, the seat she occupied was empty. The rest of the room looked normal. Vending machines glowing, TV flickering, but her chair was vacant. My pulse ticked up a notch. "Reason for visit?" I asked. "Chest tightness," she replied. "It comes and goes." Her voice was steady, no visible distress. Skin tone normal, breathing even. Triage came out, ran vitals, everything within range. While they were distracted, I quietly opened the archived census from earlier in the week. 3 admissions between 2:13 and 2:20 a.m. All marked canceled encounter. No discharge time, no attending physician, no nurse assignment, just blank closures. When I looked back up, the woman was watching me. "You always double check," she said softly. "I'm sorry?" I asked. "You like to be certain." The triage nurse called her back. I watched her walk through the treatment doors. Then I watched the hallway monitor. Empty corridor. No movement. No opening doors. Nothing. Behind me, the printer activated on its own. A wristband slid out. No name, no date of birth, just a room assignment. 12. Room 12 had been closed for renovation since spring. Room 12 was dark when I walked past it at the start of my shift. Plastic sheeting still taped along the upper frame. A faded maintenance sign clipped to the handle. It had been that way for months. At least, that's what I remembered. At 2:16 a.m., the status board showed it as occupied. No nurse assignment listed, no attending physician, just the word active. I didn't mention it to anyone. I told myself maybe facilities finished the work and I'd missed the memo. Night shift isn't always looped in. But when I passed the door on my way to grab a chart, the plastic was gone. The light inside was on. I slowed. The door was cracked open just enough to see the foot of the bed. Someone was sitting upright, still, not shifting, not adjusting blankets, just waiting. I checked the hallway monitor above the nurse's station. The camera that covers rooms 10 through 14 showed an empty stretch of corridor. All doors closed. No light spilling from 12. I turned back toward the actual hallway. Room 12's light was still on. I stepped closer, pulse picking up in a way I couldn't explain. The air felt slightly muted, like sound wasn't carrying the way it should. I pushed the door open another inch. The woman from intake sat on the edge of the bed, hands folded in her lap, dark coat still on. Her wristband caught the overhead light. Blank. No name, no barcode, just white plastic. "You're early," she said calmly. "For what?" I asked. She tilted her head slightly. "For processing." Behind me, a monitor alarm chirped at the nurse's station. Normal hospital noise, grounding. I turned briefly toward the sound. When I looked back, the bed was empty. Sheets undisturbed. Room dark. Maintenance sign back on the door. I stepped back into the hallway and checked the central board. Room 12, closed. No active patients. I swallowed and returned to the intake desk. My screen was open to the census page. A new entry had appeared. Room 12, occupied. Assigned staff, primary nurse, intake. My badge, ID. I hadn't left the desk long enough to scan into anything. I tapped my badge against the keyboard reader to refresh the session. Access granted. For now. But in the lower corner of the screen, a small notification blinked. Encounter pending. I stopped telling myself it was a glitch. Glitches don't follow patterns. The next one arrived at 2:13 a.m. exactly. Young, early 20s, hospital gown under a winter coat. No intake bracelet visible. She stepped up to the desk like she'd rehearsed the motion. Before I could speak, she said, "You're on tonight." It wasn't a question. "Name?" I asked, fingers already on the keyboard. She gave it. No patient found. I didn't bother retyping. I opened the live security feed instead. The waiting room chairs behind her were visible. Empty. On screen, the intake desk was visible too, and the chair across from me? Vacant. The camera showed me sitting alone. My throat tightened. "Reason for visit?" I managed. "Observation," she said. "That's not a symptom." "It is for us." The overhead lights flickered once, subtle enough that no one else reacted. The hum shifted lower, like the building had taken a breath. I glanced toward triage. No one was watching. When I looked back, she had leaned slightly closer to the desk. "You always try to document it," she said softly. "It doesn't help." "Help what?" She didn't answer. Instead, she lifted her sleeve. A hospital wristband circled her wrist. Tomorrow's date printed clearly across it. I hadn't printed it. "Who registered you?" I asked. "You did," she said. The printer behind me activated with a sharp mechanical chirp. I turned slowly. A wristband slid out. White plastic, fresh ink. I picked it up. Patient name, my full legal name. Date of birth, correct. Room assignment, 12. Status, pending. My pulse hammered in my ears. "That's not funny," I said, though my voice sounded distant. She studied me with something close to sympathy. "It's not about funny," she said. "It's about balance." Behind her, the automatic doors to the treatment wing hissed open. No nurse had called a name. She stepped back from the desk. "See you shortly," she said. She walked toward the doors. On the security monitor, the hallway remained empty. The intake screen in front of me refreshed on its own. User status, active. Employment verification, pending review. And beneath it, in smaller text, encounter initiated. I didn't wait for 2:17. At 2:10 a.m. the next night, I was already logged into 3 systems: census board, security feed, badge access history. If something was happening, I wanted timestamps. 2:13 a.m. The overhead lights dimmed, barely noticeable unless you were looking for it. I was. The oxygen flow monitor on the facilities panel dipped for 4 seconds. Not enough to trigger an alarm, just a soft downward notch. The waiting room doors slid open. No sensor chime. A man walked in. Older, gray hair, neutral expression. He sat without acknowledging me. I didn't speak. Instead, I watched the security feed. The waiting room camera showed empty chairs. My reflection on the monitor glass looked slightly delayed, moving a fraction of a second behind me. I checked badge logs. A new entry appeared. Staff access, intake desk, 21307. User, pending assignment. No name attached. The man stood and approached the desk. "You're early tonight," he said calmly. "I haven't logged you," I replied. "You don't need to." I tried scanning my badge against the desk reader. Red light. Access denied. I scanned again. Denied. The login session on my screen flickered. User, not recognized. My name vanished from the upper right corner. The intake dashboard refreshed. A new field appeared in the census list. Room 12, occupied. Room 14, occupied. Intake desk, occupied. Assigned staff, pending. I looked up. The waiting room was no longer nearly empty. 4 more people sat quietly in chairs that had been vacant seconds earlier. Hands folded, faces calm. Watching. The security monitor still showed an empty room. The man at the desk leaned closer. "You keep trying to verify," he said. "That slows it down." "Slows what down?" "Replacement." Behind me, the treatment doors opened. No nurse called a name. The man stepped back, giving me space like I was the one being processed. My desk phone rang once, a sharp, mechanical tone. The caller ID display read ER, internal. When I picked up, there was no voice, just the soft ambient hum of the department. And beneath it, a faint typing sound, like someone entering information into a chart. About me. The typing on the other end of the phone stopped. A soft confirmation tone followed, the same one our system makes when a chart is finalized. The line went dead. I lowered the receiver slowly. Across the desk, the man was gone. The waiting room looked normal again. 3 patients, a teenager with gauze against his jaw, an older woman with a purse, a man asleep under a hoodie. Nothing unusual. I looked at the security monitor. It matched. For a moment, I almost convinced myself it had all been exhaustion. Then the charge nurse walked past the desk without slowing. "Can you cover triage?" I asked her. She paused, brow furrowing slightly. "Sorry?" she said. "Triage. I've been at intake all night." She hesitated. "I thought you transferred," she said. "Last month?" My chest tightened. "I'm scheduled tonight." She gave a polite, distant smile, the kind you give visitors who don't understand how things work. "You might want to check with HR," she said, and continued down the hall. I turned back to my screen. The login window had reset. Username, password. I entered my credentials. User not found. I tried again, slower. Same message. I pulled up the employee portal from the shared terminal beside me. Search, my last name. No results. I widened it. Full staff directory. My name wasn't listed. I opened payroll history. Blank page. No tax forms, no pay stubs, no onboarding file. Like I had never worked here. The intake printer activated again. Another wristband slid out. Patient name, my full legal name. Room assignment, 12. Status, active. Behind me, the hallway felt quieter than it should have. The ambient noise, monitors, carts, low conversation, seemed dampened. I stood slowly. No one stopped me as I walked past the desk. No one acknowledged me either. I passed a nurse in the corridor. She stepped slightly to the side, not to avoid me, to move through the space where I was standing. Her shoulder brushed mine. She didn't react. I reached room 12. The door was open. Inside, the patients from the past week stood in a loose semicircle around the bed. The man, the woman, the young girl. All calm, all watching. On the wall behind them, the room monitor displayed a single line of text. Encounter reconciliation in progress. The young woman from 2 nights ago stepped forward. "You kept excellent records," she said gently. "I'm not a patient," I replied. She tilted her head. "You are once you're unregistered." Behind me, the hallway lights flickered. My pulse pounded in my ears. I looked down at my hands. They felt steady, solid, but the pulse oximeter clipped to the bed rail flickered on as if detecting a nearby signal. It displayed a reading. O2, 0%. Pulse. No waveform. I was still breathing, but the machine said otherwise, and the monitor beeped once, as if confirming the chart had updated. The monitor in room 12 gave one final confirmation tone. The text on the screen changed. Encounter complete. The patients didn't move. They didn't need to. Something in the air shifted. Not colder, not darker, just settled, like a scale had balanced. I turned toward the doorway. The hallway outside looked normal again. Nurses walking, a cart rolling past, the low murmur of conversation returning to full volume. No one was looking in. I stepped into the corridor. No one reacted. I walked straight to the intake desk. Someone was sitting in my chair. A new nurse, early 30s, focused expression, fingers moving efficiently across the keyboard. I stopped a few feet away. "That's my station," I said. She didn't look up. The waiting room doors slid open. A man entered, middle-aged, pale, hands folded politely in front of him. He approached the desk. "Name?" the new nurse asked. He gave it. She typed, paused, looked at her screen a second longer than necessary. "Date of birth?" he answered. She frowned slightly. The cursor blinked in an empty intake form. I stepped closer to the desk, trying to see the screen. On the security monitor above it, the waiting room feed showed exactly what I was seeing, except the space where I stood was empty. The camera displayed the new nurse sitting alone, no one beside her, no one watching. The printer chirped. A wristband slid out. The nurse picked it up slowly. She glanced toward the hallway monitor, then back at the man. "You came through the main entrance?" she asked. "Yes," he said calmly, "like usual." She hesitated, just for a moment. Behind her, on the intake dashboard, a small notification appeared. Staff census adjustment. Below it, intake desk, occupied. Room 12, closed. And in smaller text, fading quickly, previous assignment, reconciled. The nurse shook her head once, as if dismissing a thought she couldn't quite hold on to. She gestured toward the treatment doors. "Have a seat," she said. The man walked past her. The hallway monitor showed nothing. No movement. No opening doors. Just fluorescent lights and clean tile. The nurse stared at the blank intake fields for a long second before typing again. The cursor blinked patiently, waiting to see who the system would keep. If you ever come into an emergency room after 2 a.m. and the intake nurse doesn't look up right away, check the security monitor. Make sure they're still there. Hospitals are built on systems, logs, timestamps, verification. Every patient accounted for. Every staff member documented. At least, that's what we tell ourselves. But buildings that never sleep develop patterns, and patterns, over time, start correcting themselves. So here's something to think about. The next time you're sitting in a waiting room late at night, fluorescent lights humming, front desk quiet, intake nurse staring just a little too long at the screen, ask yourself, are they checking you in or making sure you're still supposed to be there? If this story unsettled you, make sure to subscribe to Campfire Horror Stories and turn on notifications, because we post new nightmares every week. And if you've ever worked a night shift in a hospital, especially in the ER, tell me in the comments. Have you ever seen someone who didn't quite register? Until next time, stay observant. And if you hear a printer activate when no one's at the desk, don't look at the name on the wristband.